Here we stand, worlds apart, hearts broken in two. We're talking about Tron from 1982. It may not be directly based on a video game, but it is a reaction to the boom of video game culture and has had a lasting effect on culture since. So stay with us. We'll be here right after the break.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movie. And now, here's Popcorn Talk's Video Game Movie Anatomy.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Popcorn Talk's Video Game Movie Anatomy. We're going to be chilling here all throughout the grid. You're listening to Sounds of the Solar Sailor from Tron, 1982's Tron. Hi, the music in this movie is so chill. It's night and day to what Tron Legacy is, and I'm really excited to talk about it. I'm one of your hosts, the Internet's Mark B. Donica, joined as always by Stacey Shuttleworth.
Hey guys, I'm Stacey Shuttleworth. You can find me online at Stacey Shuttles on Twitter or on Twitter and across the web at Nerds Doing Stuff, where I'm a nerd doing stuff.
And dat boy Patrick is not joining us tonight. There's a little bit of confusion. He watched Legacy instead. Don't blame him. Great movie. But yeah, so he's going to be back in 2 weeks. He's on assignment right now. Very busy man. But we're going to be talking about 1982's Tron, directed by Steven Lisberger. And if this is your first time... what we do here on Video Game Movie Anatomy, this album is getting to me, so I'm going to pop it back down. But look, I love this soundtrack. Anyway, here on Video Game Movie Anatomy, we dissect the film adaptations of some of our favorite interactive media. And this is a special case. Every now and again, we do have some shows that are just bad. The movies are bad, under 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, and we try to have fun with it at their expense. And sometimes we need a break. Last time we took a break, we did Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. The time before that, we took a break. It was Wreck-It Ralph. Every once in a while, we need a break.
We have to recover sometimes.
Yo.
It's week after week and just...
And Pokemon 2000 was no slouch. And this was also kind of like my wedding present to me, because
you deserve it.
The week after, the weekend after I got married, it was a wonderful time. But thank you. And so I was like, what movie do I want to come back to? Let's do Tron. Dang it, I flippin' love Tron. And I know we're representing the new movie a lot here, but it's become a lot harder to find relics from the original movies. I do have my two Intellivision games, Tron Deadly Discs and Adventures in Tron, highly rated on Metacritic for their time.
Very beloved, yes.
I mean, why not? But yeah, so we're talking about Tron. Stacey, what is your first experience with the Tron franchise?
So the first time I encountered Tron, somehow in my childhood and all the VHSs that we went through, I never had Tron. That wasn't something we watched, my sister and I, when we were kids. So the first time I experienced Tron, it was in Kingdom Hearts 2.
Okay.
On the entire Tron-based level.
Space Paranoids.
I hated it.
Yeah, why did you hate it?
Oh my god, I don't know. I thought it was the worst level. I just wanted to not do it.
Dude, I was the exact opposite. I thought it was the coolest thing, and I think a lot of people from our generation got it from Kingdom Hearts 2.
Probably. I absolutely think so. Because it looked really cool, and at first I was like, oh, this is so neat. Like, look at because, he changes his appearance based on the worlds he's in, and so you have them all decked out like they're on the grid, and it looks really cool. And we're just going through the level, and I'm like, no, I don't like this. And I think I might have just gotten frustrated with it at some point, which happened a lot in those games. But no, it kind of left me like, no, I don't want to go back there.
I actually really look forward to playing the level back, because I have all of the HD remixes. And also, did you ever play Kingdom Hearts 3D?
No, I haven't made it to that one yet.
Because they have
slowly working through them.
Tron Legacy-based levels in there that are pretty fun. And so that's going to be coming out in Kingdom Hearts 2.8 Remix, which is later this year. Yeah, but this as well, Tron has always kind of been in the world, in media, in music, in TV, in movies, and we hadn't known, but it's maintained its appeal as this look into the future, this timeless look into the future. Because while the special effects may have aged a little bit, or at least the way how they've done those special effects may have aged a bit, it still looks timeless.
It really does. Even seeing it for the first time just recently
in its entirety
as it was. Yeah. And of course, I've been familiar with it. I know the basics of it, and I can usually spot the more like overt references that happen on TV shows, and they're all over sci-fi, all over.
And just pop
Just
culture.
everywhere, yeah.
Simpsons, Robot Chicken, South Park has had multiple references to it. I didn't get that, and we're going to be talking about our favorite references later in the show. Yeah, South Park uses Tron in a very weird way. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Tron, what are you doing? Go watch the movie, support it. It is a wonderful film, and it will show Disney that it is a property worth reviving. We're going to talk about the cultural impact a little bit later, too. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, it is about a computer hacker. What? A computer hacker
is the word you're looking for.
You're right. Is abducted into the digital world and forced to participate in gladiatorial games where his only chance of escape is with the help of a heroic security program named Tron. It's crazy. It's wonderful and weird and bizarre. It's the way that Lisberger puts it in all of the special edition material is it was a frontier that back in that day it was a new frontier. We didn't know anything about it, so let's try to see what that frontier is like. And he was ahead of his time because now we have all of those user representations online and way ahead of its time.
Yeah, and that was kind of the first time it popped up. And it's a fascinating look at what those relationships mean and how they could play out.
And I think it's also important for like sort of the toxic internet culture that exists to see that there are representations of yourself that interact, and it kind of helps you see yourself as yourself when you're in these online forums.
Hey, you're still you online.
So you may have a weird
anonymous.
Yeah, you may have this weird nickname, but you're still you. So we like to have a lot of fun on here. We have certain games that we play. One of those is our speedruns. That's where we give a definitive, short review of the film. It's essentially awesome movies done quick. Mortal Kombat has a cheesy script but nails the spirit of the game. That's one example. Also, Street Fighter's costume design was the only person who did their job on the film, actors and all. So Stacey, what is your speedrun of this film?
All right. So, for Tron, while the mechanics may no longer be considered dazzling by today's standards and the plot often runs thin, Tron's one of those classics that still manages to infect viewers with a contagious ambition and a healthy dose of nostalgic fun.
That's really good. That's really it's really solid. I would put that on a box quote if I was a Disney executive.
That was a nice one.
You know, it was pretty solid, pretty straightforward. Patrick is not joining us with his paragraphs, as he usually has.
They're great.
This original...
They're very long. Sorry.
It's okay.
Carry on.
This original journey to the grid has not lost any of its weight and continues to be an inspiration for all sci-fi today and the future. And I don't think that will change.
It's held up this long. I mean, but it really has. I mean, most movies you go back and watch that especially if it was something you loved as a kid, you go back and watch it and you're like, oh God, I just ruined these
I can't believe I liked this movie.
memories. That happened to me with Pokemon.
Yeah.
I loved Pokemon. I can't
do it again.
I can't.
I just can't do it again.
No.
But yeah, this one where it's interesting. Our episodes where we enjoy the movie tend to be a little bit more straightforward, so we have to like distract ourselves. But I wanted to ask you what your controller toss moment. And a controller toss moment it's a moment when you're watching the film and you've got it. You have to be kidding me, and you wing your controller across the room. Did you have one?
So, I don't know if I had a full-fledged, like, what kind of controller toss type thing.
A visceral one we usually do.
There were a few, like, moments where they'd introduce, like, the new mechanics within the programming. There was like, oh, that's really cool, like, kind of the building, but nothing that was like, wow! And it's probably because in today's day and age, it's such a difference. But, well, when the movie first opened, I go, are you, I looked at my husband and I'm like, are you sure this is the new one? These graphics are not what you would get in 1982. And he goes, yeah, no, this is it. And I was like, oh, okay.
So that was really just
I had
the graphics?
One, I guess, plot point moment that kind of made me go, hold up, what? When they're on the grid and Flynn and Yori are about to say good, or I guess he's going to go off to save the world. And all of a sudden they're making out on screen.
Yeah. That one was, I can understand, but they explained it later. When Tron came back, she says, I thought you were dead.
Yes,
So she was having an intense emotional reaction that they didn't really go into that much. But the first time I watched the movie, I was like, what the hell? Especially because it's his ex-girlfriend's avatar. It's even more like, what are you doing?
And he's cool with it. getting action all across that.
Might as well.
Jesus.
She'll never know about it. That's not weird.
No, not at all. It's totally fine.
Mine, you probably missed it. It was
Gosh,
in the beginning when they were in Flynn's arcade and Flynn's playing Space Paranoids, and he beats the recognizer, and everybody cheers and whatever. And as he's walking away, you hear somebody go 999,000. Which is just some arbitrary high score number, like in The Wizard. It's like 50,000? You got 50,000 on Double Dragon, which is impossible in the first level. Thank you very much. But yeah, it was just like, why don't you say 1,000,000 points if you're going to do that much of an arbitrary...
If you're going to be ridiculous about it anyways.
No, 999,000. But yeah, nothing too huge. It all, as I've gone on record on the show before, if it makes sense in the world and they explain it well enough, I'm all for it.
Right.
And I think it totally did. I think it totally made its case. So this cast, very small, but very wonderful. Jeff Bridges as our hero, Kevin Flynn, and his program Clue. Bruce Boxleitner as Alan Bradley and his program Tron. David Warner, who is my favorite performance in this whole thing, who played Ed Dillinger, his program Sark, and the Master Control program. Cindy Morgan as Laura and Yori, which is a weird sort of a thing. Barnard Hughes as Dr. Walter Gibbs in Dumont. Dan Shore as Ram, and his only real-life... credit is Popcorn Coworker,
which is great.
He was given a name in the sequel. It's Roy something, and I totally forgot it. And then
Popcorn Worker.
Peter Jurassic is Crom. But yes, Popcorn Worker Dan Shore. Ram
it describes who he was.
And Ram is one of my favorite of the side characters because he's like a kid signing up for war who's looking for a hero. And he plays it to such a purity. And I love it. I love this cast. Who's your favorite from the cast?
You know what? I liked Tron a lot.
Casual. He was almost as casual as Jeff Bridges' character, but was British with it.
I figured out exactly like how the world was working, but the world mechanics at first, I mean, they start talking about the religion with the users and the relationship between users and programs.
Yeah.
And so building that idea of how this world worked took me not long. I mean, no, it wasn't overly complicated to where it threw me out or anything. It was just I wanted to make sure I had it straight. As far as the plot goes, it was a little wonky at first. I think it was kind of trying to figure out where it was going. But then when they decided on their objective, when they figured out exactly where they needed to go.
Like once the escape started to happen?
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, we have to get to the communication center. We have to get to, we have to travel and or to the main CPU I'm blinking on.
the MCP?
Where MCP was, yeah.
In the IO tower?
Yeah, there you go.
The digital planes?
Yes. Then it became pretty straightforward and, it wasn't complicated. It was just becoming acquainted with the world.
Yeah, and it took a little while just to understand everything in it. But they spent enough... I think they should have spent more time with the scenes in the prison cells so that you could learn a little bit more about what life was like. But they introduced you to Crom, the first program that Flynn ends up playing Hyali with. On the target range.
And he had such an interesting attitude compared to what you would kind of expect.
And seeing from how he was first in there, it's just like, I'm just an accounting program. And then he realized, no, I need to fight fight for my life. And I can take advantage of this new guy and keep moving forward in the games.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. Is once the world was established, it was like, oh, let's play around in here. And the fact that it's such a wide margin that they've expanded to such huge heights with the whole franchise, I think speaks to the strength of the original vision from Steven Lisberger.
Oh yeah, they made an incredibly engaging world. There was a lot to explore. There was a lot more that they could have explored, and I mean they have since.
But I mean, especially when Flynn arrives at the city and you see all of the other idol programs that are just dressed there's that one thing that was just like fries. Like, who are you people? What are you doing? What is your purpose?
Right.
What kind of a program are you?
The kind of life you lead inside here.
And why are you stuck or why do you stay in the IO tower just for security purposes or what? It raised the right sort of questions, not the questions of what the hell are we still doing here?
That doesn't make sense.
Any sense. But no, the proper questions of wanting to learn more about this world.
It was tell me more.
Yeah, and that we have the cultural impact of this movie was made even more apparent when they made the sequel, when they made Tron Legacy, and you got to see there was a PC game in 2003 called Tron 2.0 that was a direct story sequel to Tron because everybody just wanted more Tron. It didn't do well in box offices. It did not do well in box offices at all. But funnily enough, to the point where Disney didn't do a live action movie for 10 years. Disney proper, but they had Buena Vista and other companies too. But the fact that this has remained such a important piece of our culture, and people still talk about it. I don't hear a lot of people who talk super negatively about the franchise as a whole.
No.
But some of the executions, Electronica doesn't fit in Disney's California Adventure, or I don't get this, or I don't get that, and which is fine. It's something that have you learned about our Lord and Savior Tron the movie? But I've absolutely loved everything that's come from this, and the fact that we can come into a franchise through a completely different way, through Kingdom Hearts 2,
right?
Of all
Disney-based
places,
video game.
Mm-hmm. Or imagine
Amazing.
the people who got Disney Infinity, the now defunct Disney Infinity, saw the Sam and Korra figures and went, "What is this?" That aesthetic and the hyper future aesthetic is so popular amongst young kids and gross adults like myself. But so I think I wish that Disney would put more effort into it, especially after going back and watching the first one again. Mm-hmm. Goodness me.
More Tron.
Always
That's
more
just
Tron.
what we're gonna be saying.
Like, I'm beyond surprised that Tron 3 got canceled. Like, Tron Legacy didn't do terribly.
I thought it was pretty well received overall. Yeah. I mean, people liked it, and it did all right in the box office, right?
I think it did all right. It wasn't a success, but the thing about that was all of the external stuff was also treated very well. The Tron Evolution video game, all of the merchandise sold insane. I mean, here we are with it.
I mean, fought for it.
Seriously.
Really though.
The world at large loved the aesthetic, and so much came from it to the point where it re-entered the zeitgeist with a new look. It's very rare where you can get a popular piece of media that changes and people are equally as excited about it.
Yeah, because it did undergo a pretty big shift. I mean, I have not seen Legacy yet, but I know what it looks like and how it, how they've styled
You've been surrounded,
all over.
We hung out at Electronica, and that
multiple times I've been there. Absolutely,
it's flipping awesome.
I mean, I know the aesthetic, and I enjoy the aesthetic immensely.
Okay,
that's a world that's great.
Then we're definitely doing a movie night where our respective other halves and us, we're gonna have a bloody Tron party, and we're gonna watch Tron Uprising, because more about that. So we'll talk more about sort of the offshoots of the Tron franchise in a second. But the way that this production came about is impossible today. I mean, unless you have a Kickstarter, but it was Steve Lisberger had this idea, this vision of this light warrior, this electronic light warrior, and drew an animation for it, very early sketches of Tron. Everybody was doing this sort of backlit animation, this hyper neon, and it started as an animation project, and it turned into what if we shot it? So they shot on black and white against black sets and painted everything in post. It was this extremely long process where they had to obtain film negatives of the actor and then use those to paint under, because that gave them clear lines. They rotoscoped all of the color into it. This really long extensive process for production that Disney wasn't about at all, but they did over 25 minutes of computer animation, which was unheard of at the time. Absolutely unheard of. Did you know about them in the Academy Awards?
I learned about it as I was reading up on Tron. Amazing.
So they couldn't get they were denied a nomination for an Academy Award for special effects because the Academy claimed using a computer was cheating. Which, if you look at now, everything is everything.
But it also just goes to show how ahead of its times this movie was. I mean, that right there, I think that's probably the biggest argument that you can make for this movie really being something special when it came out.
Regardless of people's opinions on the film, though, again, I haven't heard anybody just all out bash Tron. Everybody recognizes how important of a movie that this was. Without this, we don't have Roger Rabbit, because this is a combination of live action and animation over each other. And while the 3D animation is rudimentary, it's so stylized that it looks like its own thing. It's like Batman the Animated Series. It may look dated, but that's just what Gotham looks like.
Right, that's what they were going for in that case.
100%. I found this funny too, is the computer that they used to edit this stuff had 2 megabytes of memory and 330 megabytes of storage. I could get that in my pinky today. Amazing.
It's incredible.
Especially like in our world today, thinking of, well, these are what computers were like. Computers were a completely different frontier than what we have now. Yeah. Literally, like, he even said, the phone that you have in your pocket has more technology than the computers that we use to edit Tron.
Rooms of computers
yes.
did not even probably a fraction of what our little phones can do.
And the set where they shot the laser that brought Flynn into the grid was a huge room, and it was actually a laser room. I forget where they shot it at specifically, but to think that entire room for one small piece of technology to power a laser when we have it's amazing that this was, oh my god. This was
Take a moment, it's okay.
Over 30 years ago was when Tron came out, and we're coming up on the 40th anniversary in 6 years. Amazing. I mean, before we were born, regardless. But just an amazing look back in time that still holds interest into where we came from as a technological culture, and would highly recommend have Tron nights. Watch this with your friends. It is an absolutely wonderful movie.
It's a fun group experience.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the critical and box office. Of course, released by Disney Pictures, 1982. It had a budget of $17 million, which for a big budget technological Marvel film like this is hearsay. They would have thrown at least $300 million at this if this was modern, and we'll look at the other budget when we do the other Tron way in the future.
Right. See what kind of money that got.
It made $33 million. It didn't even double its box office, which, I mean, it made its money back.
It did.
And I'm sure it's made countless of money back on all of the licenses.
Oh, since then?
Regardless.
Oh, yeah.
It has a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb, a 70% for critics, and 69% for audience on Rotten Tomatoes. So the general feeling is it's all right.
Right. Well, and a lot of it too. It's I was kind of noticing, looking at some of the user reviews. It's loved this as a kid, don't like it so much now, and people were kind of dinging it for that, or people who had just watched it recently weren't liking it.
Which I don't understand.
Which, yeah, I mean, I liked it plenty, and that was my first kind of...
You monsters.
...jump into it. They're like, no, the plot was terrible, and it looked awful. I was like, I don't... I mean, it looks a little basic compared to what we might be used to now, but even then, it still looks... It looks pretty amazing.
It's a time capsule.
Regardless.
It's a time capsule from 1982, but the time spent in 1982 makes you go, wow, that's amazing. Steve Jobs look like that. It nailed the aesthetic of 1982. It's supposed to be a dated movie. This is a slice from there. And the only thing, going back to Blood for a second, the only thing that may not have been super forward was Flynn going, I need the evidence that I made the game. and then all of a sudden we have to take down the MCP. So when Flynn gets back and gets the printout that has the evidence, you're like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Totally forgot.
That's what he wanted.
Awesome.
That's all.
Like that, seeing the tank battle at the top where he's just behind the keyboard going, oh, whatever, and realizing that all of that work was that was them hacking the system, which is I think cool. So like super cool.
Very cool.
Especially with the amount of time that passes between the grid and the real world, but that happens a little bit more in Tron Legacy. Yeah, so let's go into some of these reviews. I tried to find ones, and I'm pretty sure I did, from when the movie first came out. Janet Maslin from the New York Times says, its computer sequences exist in a blue-gray scheme filled with flashing lights, speeding objects, and dizzying motion. Its visual effects are wonderfully new. They are also numbing after a while. Sure.
I mean, fair. What is in they don't keep expanding into like more elaborate things as the movie progresses?
It's a progressive world, you know. I think because it's on a black background, that made it, you know, there's not as much to look at, but that helps you focus in on the performances. But yeah, the first time I watched this movie was on a computer screen, and it was getting to me. It was getting to my eyes. It was like, oh, this is a wow. Very surprised. Watching it on TV, surprisingly, much better. And then Roger Ebert, bless you, Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times, a dazzling movie from Walt Disney in which computers have been used to make themselves romantic and glamorous. Here's a technological sound and light show that is sensational and brainy, stylish, and fun. Don't know if I could have said it better myself.
No, that's perfectly phrased.
Love me some Bobby Egbert.
Got that turn of phrase.
Yes, it's like people back in the day knew how to review films without being super negative. Who knew? Sip that tea.
Shocking. Who'd have thought?
Rotten Tomatoes. No, it's just an aggregate. I'm joking. I'm kidding. We're not talking about Suicide Squad here.
No.
So let's get to some of our other fun games. We like to go off of our favorite lines from the movie, whether it's serious, whether it's silly. Mine are pretty basic and not too special, but they're just my favorite things that I have incorporated into my daily life.
Okay.
How about you?
I've got kind of a mix. I've got a couple that I liked that I thought were clever, funny, and then some that were just like, oh God, did they say that?
Go ahead.
So, here, one kind of earlier on, Crom. I mean, sending me down here to play games? Who does he calculate he is?
the little changes in...
Well done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely loved it. For me, I mean, it's one that's end of line. Like it's iconic, beyond iconic, and whenever you would, I said it in between a couple of friends of mine, like through text, and anytime somebody would put end of line, you're like, okay, I guess we're not talking about that anymore, because it was just like, I'm done. You go about your way, and it started as something super computey, and then when he uses it against Dillinger once S starts to hit the fan, it's like, oh, he's serious.
Yeah,
absolutely
it starts
serious.
to become, and that was one of those references. End of line, you see it very often.
Fairly often.
And that was one of the references that I didn't understand.
Oh, okay.
That was kind of like, okay, I know it's from Tron. It's got some meaning behind it. I didn't get like the full brunt of
now you
how
understand.
of like how dramatic it gets. So that was cool to see happen.
It's another one of yours.
Okay, so an exchange between Sark and Tron, and this one was one of my more ridiculous ones. So Sark, you're very persistent, Tron. And Tron fires back with, I'm also better than you.
Okay.
Wow.
Bro, chill.
Calm.
Exercise your chill, bro.
Yeah.
That was a fun one. Greetings programs. It just became a part of my lexicon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I loved at the end when he used it.
Yeah, right
in the
off
real
of the
world. That was good.
And yeah, it comes back into play in Legacy. But yeah, absolutely love it. And I'll just say my last one. Just
okay.
Hey, Alan, can I have some of your popcorn? Why?
That has to, yeah.
Like, just so that you can see Ram in the real world. Like, that's the only reason.
They had to throw him in there somewhere.
Hey, what if I just ask him for some popcorn? Whatever. Sure. Go ahead. That's
you
fine.
Become popcorn coworker.
Whatever, Dan.
Lives in infamy.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I have to
Go.
show. I have to
okay.
show you something after you watch Tron Legacy.
Okay.
That's amazing.
Noted.
Anyway, please.
Okay. Well, there's, bit moments. There was one that I kind of called when they're flying.
Bit moments?
Bit moments.
Yes, no, yes, no. That was dumb. I apologize.
But there was a point where they're kind of careening through the landscape with Flynn at the wheel. And he's making comments about how, like, oh, I'm a good driver, right? No. And then they hit something and start like careening wildly out of control. And I turn to Robbie and I just go, he's just going to go, no. And as I'm saying that, he starts going, no.
Absolutely love it.
It was a great moment.
We have a commenter in chat, Rob S, who says, "Wait, how have I not made you watch Legacy, Stacey?" Hi, Robbie.
The original one yet.
That's fine. We'll make a time of it, and it'll be a really fun time to listen to Daft Punk, all of the fun stuff. So let's move on to instead of recasting, because they did make a sequel, and there's been endless bits of Tron to continue in between Legacy and now. We're going to talk about Tron's Legacy, not Tron Legacy, but the legacy of Tron. Of course, Tron Legacy, its sequel 20x years later. 25, almost 30 years later. The DVD came out in time for the 30th anniversary, but we'll talk about it a little bit more in length. But that showed that Disney was willing to give it. They listened to the crowd and gave us another peek into the grid, and it became a completely different type of movie, which was fine. Another movie that I feel has timeless appeal, unless you think electronica music is dated. But that's neither here nor there. But the games themselves that came as a result of Tron, of course, Tron the arcade game. Have you ever played it?
No.
You have to kill some of the spiders. You have to get into the I/O tower. There's of course light cycles. There's disc battles. It's one of the better arcade games from that generation. I would highly recommend, if anybody finds a Tron machine, play it. And then send it to me, because I want one. But also, there was Solar Sailor, Deadly Discs, Discs of Tron, Adventures of Tron, which I have those two here. Tron 2.0, which is the 2003 sequel that has since been retconned, was about Jethro Bradley, Alan Bradley's son. Alan Bradley's son with Laura, who has passed on in this, but Yori makes an appearance in the game. I've had that game for years, and my PC has never been able to play it. And I can't stand it. I've been wanting to play that game for so many years.
Been sitting on it.
I've just been sitting on it. And then it came out for Steam, and then it had the same issue that the disc version had.
No.
But yeah, it redesigned. They redesigned some stuff, but it was the same person who did designs for the original film, which was really cool. Of course, Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts 3D. And then around the time of the movie, they released Space Paranoids, which was the game that Kevin Flynn designed, and you could play it. I think you can still play it online. You can play it on browser.
Available. Yes.
Yes, you can play it on browser. And then at Electronica and a couple of places around the country, they had arcade machines, which had one of the most unique setups ever, because it was a stick, it was a handle, it was a pilot stick, and a rollerball. So it was like a first-person shooter where you had to move the aimer and then pilot the actual gun. Very fun. I beat one of Kevin's and all of the high scores were 999,000 on the machines. Why? But
they had to keep it consistent.
Yeah, I remember I did get a high score on one of the machines, Electronica once, and I was like, yes, I'm better than Flynn at something. But not 999, I'd be there all night. And then, of course, Tron Evolution, which was the prequel to Tron Legacy, which I would highly recommend. Actually, if you are an Xbox Live, if you're a gold member, it is free right now. Highly recommend it. It's super fun. It's got all of the aesthetic of the new movie, but it's just a fun third-person action game, and I would recommend it highly. And then more recently, within the past year, Tron Runner, which is an endless runner game based in the Tron universe that I actually downloaded. Oddly enough, they have a season pass for the game, because everybody has a bloody season pass for their games. But it was on super sale, but it comes with outfits from the original Tron, So you could be dressed up as Yori, as Tron, as Flynn. But then it also has costumes from Tron Uprising and new levels and a whole bunch of new. And the soundtrack is so good that it developed its own following, and they released it independently. Same thing with Tron Evolution, Uprising, the Tron Legacy album, and then the remix album. Music has become a new part of the Tron franchise, and I think it's one of the things that people unmistakably approve of.
It's very recognizable, and some of it has that calming effect, like
some
in
of
the
it
original, but and then it kind of amps it up.
Then you get into Derezed and some of the more actual Daft Punky tracks, which are fun. But something that you haven't seen Tron Uprising? All right, so everybody, this is your homework. If you're a fan of Tron, go to, and we're going to listen to a little bit right now from Tron Legacy. But if you like this world, Disney XD made a series called Tron Uprising. It's got Elijah Wood, Mandy Moore, Bruce Boxleitner returns as Tron, Lance Henriksen, Paul Rubens. Amazing cast. It's only been one season. There is no confirmation that it's been canceled, but you can watch the first episode for free online. Disney XD posted it on YouTube, so you can go there, leave a comment that you want to see this franchise continue, because they've constantly proved through video games, through TV, through music, that this is a brand, this is a license that will continue to have legs on until the future, and I would highly recommend it. And even to the point where it invaded the real world. The grid invaded the real world, and with Electronica, Disney's California Adventure, they had it for way too short of a time.
Oh, it really was.
It was so much fun.
It was great. I loved the
tell the folks at home about what Electronica was like.
Electronica, it looked like you were stepping onto the grid, to be quite honest. They had the entrances set up so that it really looked like you were kind of being scanned in the way they used laser lights and shows.
Laserman, he controlled the lasers.
Laserman, yes.
Laserman was awesome. Look up a video of Laserman at Electronica and have yourself a trippy time.
Good time. They served Tron-themed drinks. They had Flynn's Arcade open in the back. It was always packed. But
how many glowy ice cubes do you have? Because we have at least 6 or 7ن from Electronica.
I don't know if I ever accumulated that many.
No? Oh.
Yeah. I think I've got 1 or 2 floating around at home, but...
They also had like the glowy glasses that said Electronica on them. You could watch a screening of a special like 4D look at Tron Legacy, which was really cool. They had tournaments with the Wii version of the Tron Legacy game. They had a DJ spinning all night, and...
which was great dance music.
It was amazing.
It was the place you went at night to go kind of get your party on at Disneyland a little bit.
You could drink on Disney property, and it was a cool aesthetic. Everybody was dancing.
Right. Which was one of the first novel things that everyone was like, oh, they're serving drinks.
Actual alcohol. Go! Let's go. But yeah, it was something that I think was gone too soon, and the fact that they've abandoned... maybe not abandoned, but they've sort of put the franchise on the shelf for now, makes me sad that we won't get more of that type of an experience in the real world. And the last sort of thing that we're going to do, that's our last game, is we're going to talk about our 3 favorite pop culture references that have come as a result of Tron. These are in no particular order, except mine. I know exactly what my favorite is. But, Stacey, why don't we start out with one of yours?
Okay. Let's start with Fairly Odd Parents, which was one of my favorite shows growing up. They made references all over the world about everything, and one of them was an episode in which Timmy requested the perfect video game to impress his friends, and they got dragged into a game that looks astonishingly like the world in Tron.
Similarly to Tron.
To the grid. Even their outfits have a very Tron aesthetic to it.
Yeah. That was a fun one. I used to have... Game Boy Advance had Game Boy Advance Video, which were carts that had Fairly Odd Parents cartoons, SpongeBob cartoons, even Shrek. And one of the Fairly Odd Parents ones had that on it. So I used to watch that episode all the flipping time. Big fan of Fairly Odd Parents and that episode. Anything about video games before they really popped is like, oh, I'm all about it.
Hey, they're talking about video games.
I like video games. And then I'm going to go, essentially, I think the very first time... let's go to that one. Dexter's Laboratory had an episode where Dexter got an old computer program called the Master Computer program, to which I still call the MCP Master Computer, and it took over his whole lab, and he gets into essentially a light cycle, and it's a fun little nod to Tron. But that was, I believe, the very first exposure to the Tron franchise that I ever had, and I still, I mean, Dexter's Lab lives on in all of us.
You know, it may have well been mine too. I wouldn't have recognized it at the time.
Exactly, but then going back and going, it's MCP, it's a giant red head.
Oh yeah, very clear.
And there's another picture that I didn't pick of Dexter in a essentially a light cycle. But yeah, absolutely one of my favorites.
Okay. We'll go back to Kingdom Hearts 2, which was my first introduction to Tron. I mean, the entire level was based on Tron there. You can see them all wearing
how can
Tron gear.
How can you not see that aesthetic and go, I need more of that in my life right now?
They looked cool. I didn't like the level.
Man. Yeah. It was... That was my favorite level in Kingdom Hearts 2. Especially because I got to be surprised by it because I had very little knowledge of Tron until that point.
I think at that point in my life, I didn't like surprises. I liked the familiarity.
It's like, okay, here's the part where Will Turner's going to put the gun to his head, and then everybody's going to turn into a zombie, and then... whatever. The weird Pirates of the Caribbean level that they had.
Yeah, there were a couple of weird moments.
Oh, plenty. Absolute plenty. Oh, I need to show you an amazing picture of Zaldin from Organization 13. Anyway, that weird place. Next I'm going to go with Freakazoid. Didn't think about it until the past couple of years when Freakazoid finally started to come back into public eye. They re-released the DVDs. The entire thing is a parody of Tron. The first 2 episodes. In the theme song, check out Dexter Douglas, Nerd Computer Ace, was searching on the internet and got zapped to cyberspace. He gets sucked into the computer, turns into Freakazoid, and also, I find it funny, the internet drives him absolutely insane, which is kind of another predictor of modern society. But yeah. He gets sucked into the computer, becomes a superhero as a result, and is just a general lunatic. I absolutely love Freakazoid still to this day.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I don't think we would have gotten Freakazoid if we didn't get Tron.
Yeah, it kind of set that groundwork for it.
It's like, what if we did something else sucked into a computer? Why not? What's your last one?
Kind of introduce the idea. So, a show near and dear to my heart has used Tron a couple of times, but I think the most overt reference for sure. So, Futurama, which parodies sci-fi history across the board. You've got, I mean, anything and everything. And so one episode called Law and Oracle, anyone familiar with the show, it's about a group of delivery people basically flying around the universe and delivering packages. So our main character gets sick of being a delivery boy and joins the police academy.
It's a parody of a lot of different 80s franchises.
Oh yeah, no, they cover all kinds of things constantly. So there he is riding on his light cycle, and they have a very, very Tron, directly from Tron,
absolutely
sequence in which they're speeding around on the light cycles, chasing after the bad guys.
And yeah, absolutely lovely reference. This last one is my absolute favorite, and nobody's going to get it because it comes from my favorite web series of all time that sort of brought me into this world of web video. It's a series called Tiki Bar TV. They have had over 40 episodes. The 20th episode was called The Son of the Internet, which is about a character played by Alex Albrecht, who I don't even know if kids know who Alex Albrecht is, who is a pioneer in web video, plays the illegitimate bastard son of the father of the internet. And when they show him getting a call from his father, we first see the Tiki version of Master Control Program, and then there's also references to the bit. It's full of Tron references. There's even a miniature disc battle, but it's the whole series I would highly recommend because it's a great irreverent comedy show. But they also, when they get to referential stuff like that, it gets really fun. But yeah, that was my I should really get into this Tron stuff a little bit more if it's even getting into web series.
That's right. You had references all over the place, which is like, hey, Tron.
I would even say a notable mention to The Strokes. Was it 2159? They did an entire record that all of the aesthetics were of the grid. And it's like they shot a video that was classic Tron. So I totally forget the name of the song. If anybody in chat knows, please let me know. But final thoughts on Tron.
even seeing it in modern day, I enjoyed it a lot. It got a little slow sometimes with some of the plot, and it wasn't like a particularly fleshed out, exciting plot necessarily, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
And the world was fascinating. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, I want to know what all those other idle programs.
And we learned a little bit more about
all
it.
The history.
We learned a little bit more about it in Tron Legacy. So we're gonna hang out. We're gonna have a good time. I absolutely love this movie, this franchise, everything. Sometimes you can't talk to me without me saying something about Tron. Almost daily, I say, "Man, I miss electronica." Just the last song at my wedding was a song from electronica. That's how much this whole franchise has affected me. And so I absolutely love it. Tell your friends, have parties. Let's keep Tron going in the public lexicon. Let's go for Tron 3. I'm super excited about it. Would you give this franchise a game over or an extra life?
Extra life. Bring on more Tron.
Extra life. 100% for me, if you couldn't tell. Last thing, in 2 weeks, we will be back here talking about another video game movie. This time, we're going back to the bottom of the spectrum.
We cheated this week. We
Yes,
have to.
I wanted a week off, but you know what? We're going back to the man called Uwe Boll. We're going to see a classic from Mr. Uwe Boll starring Jason Statham. It's called In the Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege tale, of course, based off of the Dungeon Siege franchise. So, make sure to check that movie out. I know you want to see it. You do.
Oh, yeah.
Ron Perlman's in it. A lot of really notable actors are in it. So go check it out. In the Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege tale. We'll be back here in 2 weeks talking about that. Leave us a review on iTunes. Leave us a review down below. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. We have a good time here. Make sure to get Tron Evolution. It is free right now on the Xbox Live Arcade if you are a gold member. But until next time, Stacey, where can the folks find you?
Find me online at Twitter at Stacey Shuttles, or online on Twitter and across the web at Nerds Doing Stuff, where I do all kinds of random things as a nerd.
As a nerd. You can find me on Twitter at Mark B. Donica. You could also find me on other shows here on the Popcorn Talk Network. Last week I did an episode of Sci-Fi Weekly with a wonderful person named Zach Wilson, and I also did today's episode of Jedi Alliance. We're coming up on 100 episodes, so if you're a Star Wars fan, please make sure to check it out. We have a great time. It's a lot of fun. Also on our sister's site, AfterBuzz. Follow us here at the Popcorn Talk. And also follow me at Mark B. Donica. It's a whole bunch of stuff happening right now. Whole bunch of video games coming out right now. Also follow Patrick, P to the D's. He also does a podcast called Pixel by Pixel. Follow him there. But until next time, programs, we will see you in the grid.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.